Welcome back to the Make It Mastermind podcast. Back to the November special, part 2, week 2. This week's topic is going to be talking about truth, and we're back in with Neil. Neil, welcome back to the podcast.
How you doing, guys?
Yeah, good. Yeah, let's look into it. We left off last time kind of touching on truth on the back of zero tolerance, kind of how they kind of interlinked. So there's a natural progression into this week, really.
Yeah, so the last 5 minutes last time we touched on truth and the importance of truth, and so what I find fascinating, to get straight into it, is that we have these themes in our life, yeah? So truth is one of them, love may be another one, ability, integrity, courage, all these sorts of things. And yet, when you put someone on the spot and ask them to define what that topic is, a topic that we all use, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, okay, tell me, what's truth? You'd struggle to answer that question, right? But yet we all think we can recognise it straight away, and we all want to live our life according to some sort of truth, because that's how we're going to navigate ourselves to where we want to be. But actually defining what truth is to begin with is nigh on impossible, unless you've genuinely sat down and given it some serious consideration. And that is why we tend to pitch our notion of truth entirely based on scientific truths, which is fine, because we live in an objective world, so objective truths are relevant. But there's two types of truth in the world. So there's objective truths, which are things that can be proven scientifically, which we all accept, and then there are subjective truths. So something that can be true for me but not true for you. Okay. So the problem with subjective truth is that if we're talking about something that's subjective, we're no longer talking about truth. We're talking about opinion. So if you and I can disagree on what's true and what's not true, by definition, it no longer becomes truth, because something that's true needs to be recognisable by everybody to be accepted as an objective truth. So this is a complicated subject, all right? So we're going to have to go back and forth quite a lot. The other thing that's fascinating is that, from what I can tell, there are two types of truth, okay? So we've got the scientific truth, and then we've got things that are behaviourally true, morally true, okay? So things that, if we live as though they are true, our lives improve, and our cultures improve, and our societies improve, and our families improve. So biblical truth would fall into that. Religious truth would fall into that. These are things that can't be proven scientifically, but we know that if we live the Ten Commandments, for example, okay, if you were an atheist, but you lived your life according to the Ten Commandments, roughly speaking, your life would work out pretty well. They're good moral objectives. It's a good moral code by which to live by. What often happens, though, especially in the last sort of 50, maybe even longer than that, so in the last 78 years, is that as we've become more scientifically aware, we have pitched in as a species almost exclusively on scientific truths, which mean now we discard moral and behavioural truths almost completely, to the point where the moral and behavioural truths that not our parents, maybe our grandparents lived by, yeah, in the 40s and 50s and 60s, we've abandoned them completely, which has caused real objective problems in our society. So the breakdown of the family, single parents, drug use, the sexual revolution. All of these things came about because of the abandonment of objective truths. So no sex before marriage. That was a religious truth that was lived for millennia, okay, until we got to the 60s and there was a sexual revolution. So we have a mess. We have a mess about deciding, okay, what is true objectively? What is true morally? Where do these two truths interject with each other? And which one should we be living by? Which one should we be following? And how do we put that into our lives? You two are confused already.
I'm just interested to get into it, really.
To hear both sides of it. I mean, like you say, a lot of people will have their own sort of moral code that they live by, and a lot of that will be based on sort of positive and negative, and whether they're doing something right or wrong.
Yeah.
So with that, is that something everybody, do you feel, should be conscious of then, in terms of that moral compass and how they participate as part of the community, as part of life, and part of being human?
Yeah, well, there's a social contract which isn't written, but we all know what it is, and you see that social contract play out every single day. You know, you're driving down the motorway and everyone is obeying rules. They're sticking to the speed limit. Generally speaking, they'll stop when there's a red light. You know, we'll go to the cinema and there'll be 100 strangers there, and we all behave and we hold the door open for each other and we'll apologise for banging into somebody. These are all part of the social contract that keep us interacting with each other. Okay, so what are they? Well, they're behavioural truths. If you don't behave like that, bad things will happen, unnecessary confrontations will occur, it will weaken your character, because then you'll be the guy that's just the dick that can't behave in a certain environment. So they're all behavioural truths. They're true. They're provably true. And the reason that we're provably true, we know that if we don't live by these broad social contracts, then we're unable to operate in the world. And we all know people like that. We know people that are just so difficult you don't want to deal with them. And that's because they stray too far away from these sort of behavioural truths, which is part of it's almost a paradox, because on the one hand, what we want to do is search for individualism and individuality and to find that and separate ourselves from the crowd. But if we do that too much, we become unsocialised to a level where nobody wants to interact with us. So it's a real paradox. But yeah, of course, you need to be aware of those behavioural truths, because they're literally the things that allow you to navigate through the world. I mean, literally, the other things that get you through the day is the way in which you interact with the guy at the petrol station. When you say sorry to the woman you bang into in the street, these are all behavioural truths.
Yeah. How conscious should someone be of where their own behavioural truths come from, but kind of the way that their compass is kind of pointing in that sense? Does that make sense to you?
How do you mean? If it contradicts with each other?
Yeah, basically, how hard is it for people to realise their behavioural truths are not really truths, like you touched on earlier? They're more subjective than they really realise, even though they're kind of programmed to be automatic. Do you know what I mean? How do people work around that? How do you?
I think
does that? Or maybe start how does that happen? And then how do you then kind of reprogram that?
Well, I think it's right. So I think I mentioned this briefly last week. So I'm not a guy that likes small talk. I'm not good at it. I can't do it. So with my son, for instance, he's 7, so he gets invited to birthday parties all the time. I avoid them like the plague. And I'll send Jody some, purely because I don't like engaging in that small talk. I'm not great at it, but I'm also not an idiot. I know that if I'm there in that environment, in order to not make other people feel uncomfortable, not make them feel small, and to dampen what people would say about me afterwards, I don't want to come across too rude. Okay, so I've got to sacrifice a little bit of what I don't want to do in order to honour the social contract. Now, the real question is, how much of you are you going to sacrifice in order to honour that social contract? But if you don't honour the social contract, at least to some degree, you essentially opt out of society. And when you do that deep enough and often enough, that's when Columbine happens. That's when Aurora happens. That's what these people have done. They've opted out of society to such a degree that they're complete outliers now. So, and obviously that's a very extreme example, but it points to what is true with this objectively, is that if we don't engage with the social contract to some degree, we put ourselves on the outside of society, and that's when problems arise. Yeah.
And where's the line then? Where's the line of individuality within truth and the social contract? Where's the line? Because I guess it's really fucking grey.
It doesn't exist, and it's very grey, and it's interesting because a lot of the people that we admire the most, and we look at the true creatives in society, I think like Andy Warhol, Vivienne Westwood, these sorts of people, they were so far left field, they were so far outside of the norms of society that we revered them for it. Okay, so they found a way to operate in that space and to operate there comfortably. And then you get people at the other end of that spectrum, Charlie Manson, the Manson children, the Manson family, who operated in essentially the same way, completely out on the other side, but operated in a way that just led to evil and malevolence and being ostracised by society. So trying to find your own individual path while still maintaining this social contract is one of the most difficult things that you will ever truly attempt to do. It's one of the reasons why there's so few individuals in society. Like they just don't exist. They're very, very rare, and it's because once you attempt to do that, you're instantly in a place where you're not comfortable because you're different to everybody else, and you haven't yet found your level of individuality, so you're not confident enough to stay in that place for too long. It's like you're dipping your toe into a pool, and the water's too cold, so you come straight back out, rather than staying there and getting used to the temperature of the water. So it's I don't know if there's any easy way to answer that question. Like, I'm at the limit of my understanding of this now, but it's a grey area. How do you do it? I don't know how you do it. I don't know exactly how you do it. I guess you do it by constantly interfacing with the things that you think are right on the limit of where you're comfortable, and then seeing how that feels, and then deciding whether you're going to stick there and keep pushing or whether you're going to pull back. And you do that often enough, you will find somewhere which is appropriate to where you're meant to be.
Yeah. And so to go to the flip side of truth, which is you're talking about kind of universal truths of that are just kind of now, it's kind of hardwired into people, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of stuff is hardwired. So can you touch on and explain the other side of truth when you're saying that it's more of a relative concept, like it's an individual concept of what people believe to be true?
Well, if you go back if you go, well, let's talk religiously. So Western culture was essentially governed by Christianity for the longest time. There was a separation of church and state, but that separation of church and state existed only in theory. Okay, the church was very powerful. Religious truths were very powerful. Those religious truths extended beyond the pulpit and extended out into organisations and to businesses and to how we were running personally. So when the sexual revolution happened in the 60s, we began to question all of those things. So, for instance, sexual promiscuity. You were a single woman in the 50s who got pregnant. That was bad news for you. That was really, really bad news for you, okay? If you are a single woman in 2019 and you want to sleep around, it's fine. And you're applauded for it. And there's no issue with that. Generally speaking, some people obviously will have an issue with it. So we've eroded, and it's become, the more we've abandoned Christian values, and I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, it's just an observation. But so the more we've abandoned Christian values, the more we've got ourselves into a place where we've broken down truth so much that we don't know what's behaviourally true anymore. So what we've essentially done is said, okay, let's abandon everything that we thought we knew behaviourally, okay, and let's essentially have a free for all, and we'll see where it lies. We'll see what happens. And Nietzsche, one of my heroes, but the Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, said, who was famous for saying God is dead. Yeah, you probably heard him say that. Now, that wasn't a triumphant statement. What he said by God was dead was he could recognise that in the West was abandoning Christian principles. And he knew that forget whether you're religious or not, that's not the point. Forget whether God exists or not, that's not the point. Religious truths as a basis for human behaviour, we were abandoning that. And he knew that was going to lead to a bad place. And the more that's been abandoned, we have seen a huge rise in social and cultural problems. So single parents are through the roof. Incarceration rates for teenagers are through the roof. Drug abuse is through the roof. Teenage pregnancies are through the roof, which is weird because we have these behavioural standards that appear to be lessening in terms of the statistics, yet as a species, as a culture, as a society, our technological advantages and our intelligence is growing and growing and growing, but it's not growing in line with our morality, and it's a really fascinating crossroads. Our intelligence gets higher, our morality seems to be going lower.
It's so true. I find it fascinating as well how it's not often really discussed. It's not this ain't a conversation you can have across on the table with your family or friends. But it's a big thing, really, isn't it?
Well, it's a difficult conversation to have as well because it's because there's no clear answers, and that's why it's a fascinating conversation, but it's a frustrating one. And it's like, so you want to talk about what's true, okay? So let's say the family was the bedrock of Western civilization for 1,000 years, going back longer than that, okay? We stayed in families, we stayed in tribes, we didn't deviate from that. There'd be 3 or 4 generations of the same family living in one house. We didn't deviate from that at all. When those things occurred, society fundamentally was much stronger. Okay, it's a fact. Now that isn't to say that it was better in every way, it wasn't. There was people that stayed in abusive marriages because they didn't want to divorce because of the pressure of the church. All of that happened, okay, but we're talking in general terms. Now we're in a place where we have abandoned all of those secular truths and we've said, well, actually, a mother and a father, they can raise the children, but it doesn't have to be them. It can be a dad and a dad. It can be a mum and a mum. Or a single mother is just as good as a 2-parent family. And these things aren't true. These things aren't true. This is a form of where liberalism has just gone too far. These things happen. And what we want to do is pay homage to the people that are challenging these sorts of truths, but the reality is there was a standard that worked really, really well for society. Now, I'm not saying that we should hark back for these kind of the olden days because society is moving forward at a rapid speed and we've got to adjust to that. But there is a standard of morality. There is a gold standard that worked well, and we've abandoned that, and society doesn't function as well as it did 50 years ago. That's just a fact. So maybe we've got to look at the truth and say, no, when the dad's in the home, the family is more solid and secure. When the father's not in the home, catastrophic things happen. That's the truth. It's an objective truth. It's a provable truth. People that are raised by single mothers, especially young men, they have a much higher chance of being incarcerated, a much higher chance of drug abuse, much higher chance of dropping out of university, or even not even getting to university. Nobody knows explicitly the reasons for that, but the one common denominator is that the father's not in the home. But we don't ever want to speak about these things because they're uncomfortable truths, because that part of us that's nice and wants to reach out to people wants to say, no, you can be raised by a single mum, that's fine. And it is fine. Single mums are some of the greatest heroes of our society, but it's not optimal. So what we want to do is look where we can speak the truth and say, this is the truth and this is optimal. Okay. Now, if we don't have what's optimal, how do we look for what's less optimal? But where it's all we've got to play with. It's the best for this situation, which is fine. We have to do it. We have to be pragmatic in life. We have to. Pragmatism is a very important quality, but it doesn't mean that we should abandon the ideal.
No, do you know what? It's actually now you say it and map it out. It makes more sense to me when I'm sat here trying to digest it. It's pretty fucking. It's hard, but what I was picking up was, yeah, you're saying society's progressing and it's moving forward and it's a progressive culture now. Do you know? It's like, push the boundaries, and it's kind of like nearly within reason, apart from obviously extreme cases. Like everything's kind of okay.
Yeah.
You can be who you want to be. You can associate with who you want to associate. You can put across you can be whatever you want to be, essentially. And even today and tomorrow can be different. And that's great. And part of me, like, I kind of love it because I don't really care how that pans out. But then where's the reflection of society to look back or actually analyze it for?
Where's the line?
Like, where's it going, or what's? Because now it's becoming like there's got to be a trend. There's going to be statistics. There's going to be facts to look at to understand this dynamic of all these sort of things and the compound effect of it, and then where is that trajectory actually heading to in terms of the way?
It heads to social destruction, which is an incredibly. That sounds like a ridiculously extreme thing to say, and it only sounds extreme to people that don't know their history. That's how do you think the Roman Empire fell? How do you think ancient Greece fell? They fell because they were cultures that expanded everything to allow anything goes, anything's okay. They got rid of all objective truths. Yeah, everything was subjective. We do as we feel, we do it with long, and they destroyed themselves. And we destroy ourselves now. I mean, trying to think of an example that's right. So I mean, transgenderism. Yeah, she's like the big social cause at the moment. Okay, so if I asked you your opinion on transgenderism, what would you tell me? Without thing like your genuine, honest opinion.
I'm indifferent. I don't. With stuff like that, I don't care.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't care. You can identify whatever you want. I have no issue with it whatsoever. None. The suicide rates for trans people after they transition are 40%. 40%. For the general population, it's 1%. 0.9% in some of the Western countries. 40% is the suicide rate for trans people. Okay. Now, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that at all, about where that may be. And these are people that have transitioned already. Okay. People that will transition where our society and our culture said, that's amazing, congratulations, go and be whatever you want to be. Yeah. There is no objective truth anymore. There is no male and female. Do whatever you want to be. Well, 40% of those people are killing themselves. So, you want to talk about where's the line? Well, where is the line? If I came to you and said, I just desperately feel like this arm just shouldn't be there. There isn't a doctor on the face of the earth that would take this arm off for me. And there isn't any one of my friends or my family that would take me seriously. And if I perpetuated with this genuine thought, wherever it came from, that this arm wasn't meant to be there, everybody in my life would encourage me to seek some sort of support. But if I tell you that my penis shouldn't be there, and I want it to be removed, I will literally be applauded.
Yeah. Do you know what goes back to you? I want to go back to what you say about 40% though, is that it's like it's a fact taken to prove the statement, right? But it needs to be like outweighed by another fact. That would be how many people that want to change gender what's their suicide rate?
What, the people that don't transition?
Yeah, because then there's their absolute well,
the people that don't transition, their suicide rate would be in the same as the general population, which would be around 1%.
No, but they were in the same frame of mind of like, I'm in two minds. I want to be a woman, or people are telling me I shouldn't be a woman. Parallel universe. There's two of me. I pick this way, and I pick this way. And like, is the chance 40% and 40%? Is it down to the mindset that they had before being operated on, or is it down to the path? Like, you'll never really know. Do you know? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, I understand what you're saying.
You need to have like a total parallel universe of both.
No, of course. And what I'm not trying to make it an oversimplified statement, but simply So imagine before these people transitioned. I don't want to make a discussion about transgender, but let's just
No.
So imagine before these people transitioned,
Yeah.
they would have said that the number one thing in their life that was making them miserable and depressed and all of these things was that they were living in a body that wasn't their own. So they do the greatest thing they can do to fix that, and 40% of them are still not happy, which would and look, I'm not a psychologist, but that would strongly suggest, that the issue was not fixed into their gender. It would strongly suggest that. Now, look, these are people that have my sympathy. I'm not a transphobe by any stretch of the imagination, not at all. But I do think we have to get to a place where we are unafraid to speak objective truths and to speak objective truths forward, regardless of who we upset and regardless of who we offend. And the great lie that we've been sold by this society is that if you do that, you are a bigot, you are a homophobe, you're a racist, you're a transphobe, and it's nonsense. I can say, look, this is not true, it's not right, it's not real, but I can still want to support you and love you and help you, But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to change objective truths to fit in with your subjective view of who you are. Because when you do that as a society, you're dead. You're dead. It's game over when you do that. On Facebook now, there's like 62 genders that you can choose from. Why? And you guys, where does that go? And I think we've become so accepting as a culture, so unbelievably accepting, that we are quickly getting to a place where we are going to be overwhelmed with chaos because we've abandoned the boundaries of what truth is. And this is why truth is so important. Truth gives us those boundaries in which we operate. And when you remove them, and to begin with, when you remove them, it feels good and we're expanding and we're doing all these great things. And you find out very quickly that, no, that's why we did that. That's why we did that thing. I get that now. But we have such a thirst for instant gratification and me, and I want to do what I want to do regardless of the truth. And then people are so terrified of offending or upsetting people that we will abandon things that are scientifically and morally and behaviourally correct just because it doesn't fit in with somebody's subjective view of who they are in that moment. And it's a dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing. Yeah,
do you know what? To touch on it is so true, and I think it's kind of crazy when you go into it. It's like if someone tells you, like, you might post something online tomorrow, and Joe Blogs, who's got no, his profile picture's a fucking egg or whatever. Like he's anonymous.
Yeah,
and he can assassinate what you're doing honestly and ruthlessly, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And your friends will actually fucking lie to you and say, "That's not, mate. That's fucking great." Like if we wanted to do something for this podcast, like, "Oh, Julian, I think I should paint myself green, and that's going to get loads of views." I don't want you to go along with me. I want you to say, "James, you're a fucking idiot, mate. What are you doing?" But like Joe Blogs down the street, if I'm painted green, like, why are you doing that? That's just strange.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you might not understand where it's come from and all that sort of stuff. Like, there has to be a bit of background to it or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
But the raw truth in that, the instinct of that truth is like, it's honesty, isn't it? Like, and it's kind of pure.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's like your friends sometimes won't tell you what they actually think, and it's, I guess, what we talked about last week about having these uncomfortable moments where we'll do things just for the sake of doing them and not knowing we're not acknowledging that in that moment.
Yeah.
So why do you feel that as humans we do that so much? Like, we know something's wrong, we know we shouldn't be doing it, or we see someone doing something that we know we shouldn't do it, but we don't challenge it. We'll just accept it.
Fear. It's fear. Simple as that. It's fear and cowardice. There's no other way to justify it. But I think, to break that down even further, look, one of the biggest pressures that we have in this society is the fear of judgment. Yeah, whether it's for our family, and it's certainly now the fear of judgment on a much larger scale with social media. So even if we think something is wrong, or we feel something is wrong, or we're not comfortable with something, most of us won't say it. And you know that. How many times you've been to a restaurant and had a shit meal?
Yeah, and you just pay your fucking...
And that's on a micro level that's of no significance.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you see things are wrong with your family, with your relationship, with your culture, with your society, and you stay silent, then you're part of the problem. But it's understandable why you wouldn't do that. You look at the people that do. Okay? Jordan Peterson, for example, that man's one of my heroes. But he became as famous as he had for putting his neck above the pulpit and for speaking out against certain things. And his life was hell for 3 or 4 years. Death threat after death threat, job loss after job loss. And now he's got to a point where he's overcome all that and it's been beneficial to him. But you've got to go through a lot to speak truth. You've got to go through an awful lot to speak truth. And one of the biggest things now is that we are a culture that is obsessed with feelings rather than what's true. And one of the greatest gifts that I ever gave myself was 3-4 years ago, when I've always been opinionated. Yeah, I've always been that guy. I've always been paying attention to things. And the more that I decided to really learn, I realized that a lot of my opinions were bullshit, and they were based on feelings and my own subjective interpretation of things. And I promised myself that I would make the move away from being opinionated to being informed. And that was one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself. And now I'm always trying to operate in that place where it's like, this is what I think, but is it true? Yeah, I care only about what's true. I don't give a fuck about opinions, including my own. Like, I've destroyed my own opinion many times. I care about what's true. Because when you align yourself with what's true, then you're powerful. You're a powerful human being when you align with what's true. Then you can do something in the world. But whilst we align ourselves with opinions and what feels good, there's no power there, because eventually what feels good will be destroyed by what's true. You know, Martin Luther King, the truth will always out. Eventually the truth will always out. So stay away from opinions and try and find out what's true.
How much does it boil down to your ego and social and society? Like, it's kind of like when I sit and listen to it, it's like, yeah, your ego's definitely got to play a part, because your ego wants to be liked and right and this and that, or whatever it wants to be.
Oh, huge.
And then obviously society plays a role of, well, your perception of what will happen if you say something. You've already decided what's going to happen, even though you say something and it's, you've already panned out. Like, I say, I don't know, Neil, you're a dick. And I'm thinking, well, Neil probably, he might smack me. I've decided that I call you dick and you smack me, so I'm not going to call you dick. Yeah. Obviously, I won't call you dick anyway. But, you see what the point of what I'm saying, like, to break it down simply.
It's a fear of the consequence.
Exactly, that's what it is. It's the, like, you might get a shit haircut, a really bad haircut, like, or just a bad one time, and I was like, oh, it's a bad haircut, that. But I won't say it.
Yeah.
Because it'll just upset you.
Yeah.
I know it's trivial stuff like that, but it's like down, like you said,
it is trivial.
Down to a smaller level.
See, those things are trivial, but the reality, look, however you act in the trivial matters, 100% that's how you act in the big matters. You know, when I used to box, the boxing coach always used to say to us, however you perform in the gym, that's how you'll perform in a fight. You know, we'd be like, no, look, I'll put the 12-ounce gloves on. We're only in the gym. It's like, whatever you do here, you'll do that. You know, it carries on. Who you are in the small moments will manifest itself in the bigger moments. So one of the best things I ever heard on this was, I listened to an interview years and years ago. Jordan Peterson was being interviewed by an Australian TV host, and this Australian TV host was obviously a fan of Jordan Peterson's. And at the end of the interview, he thanked Jordan Peterson for the courage that he'd shown in the face of fire for bringing these issues to the forefront. And Peterson, that was the end of the interview. Peterson didn't say anything back, and almost instantly, Peterson stopped him and said, "No, that people say this to me a lot." And I said, "It's not right. I don't think it's courage." He said, "I think about this a lot. He goes, I don't think I'm a courageous person." He says, "I am simply afraid of the right things." And I was like, fuck, wow, yeah, I'm afraid of the right things. And so many of us are afraid of the wrong things. What will happen if I speak out? What will happen if I offend? What will happen if I get it wrong? Yeah? Well, people say, no, I'm afraid of not speaking my truth. I'm more afraid of going to bed tonight knowing I had something to say to the world and not saying it. I'm more afraid of that than of anything else. He said, if anything, I'm picking the easier of two options by doing what I'm doing, you know? So it's not courage. It's deeper than courage. But I think that's a wonderful place for us to get to be afraid of the right things, to attach yourself so much to truth and to honesty and to nobility that the fear of being judged or criticised or critiqued or outcast is secondary to your fear of putting your head on that pillow knowing full well there were things inside of you that should have been said or done or acted on and weren't, and they die with you. You know, I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah. How much do you give it, or put it down to the fact that we're actually now so much more exposed to stupid people online, incredibly smart people online, my opinion, your opinion, and it's so instant. Like, someone tweets, I can tweet. Like, there's no thought, there's no...
Zero.
Like,
and it's virtue signaling.
Take it, look at it critically, try to, analyse it, look at it from various angles, and then, respond.
We've got... Well, we are literally literally a society of fat, stupid people. We're fatter now than we've ever been. Obesity's through the roof.
We are fatter.
And the IQs for the under 35s have been dropping by 0.5 percentage point a year for the last 20 years. So what I'm saying is not controversial, even though it sounds uncomfortable, which we talked about before, right? Yeah. So the truth is uncomfortable, right? Get used to hearing uncomfortable truths. Without hearing uncomfortable truths, you can't grow. We are literally a generation of fat, stupid, opinionless people. Right, let's give you a very current example. So the fires in the Amazon, at the moment. That has been shared ad infinitum by every virtue signaling idiot that can just click resend on Instagram without actually looking at what's occurring and why it's occurring. So the forest fires in the Amazon at the moment are no worse than they have been for any year in the previous 20 years. No, they're no worse. Okay. Now that isn't an argument as to why they were happening, etc. But they're no worse. They haven't been reporting them for the last 20 years. Okay. The fires in the Amazon also happen every single year. They happen every year. There was a quota for farmland that is allowed to be set alight so that they can use for grazing. These are standard things, but for whatever reason, social media got a hold of it this year, and now there's been celebrities that are saying, I'm not eating meat anymore, I'm going to go vegan because of X, Y, and Z, and it's just nonsense. It's a way to virtue signal, and you find something that feels good. This is terrible, these fires are terrible. Of course they are, but the reasons for them are multivariate. You've taken one reason and you've pressed resend to your followers, your 1,000 followers, your 2,000 followers, and now you look like a great person. You look really good. But there's no thought gone into your argument there. No thought at all. It's not true. What you're saying is not true. There's an element of truth, but it's not true. And that's another fascinating distinction that really fascinates me, is that there is a difference between true and truth. Okay? What's true isn't always the truth. The truth is a far, far deeper thing than what is true. Okay? So let me give you an example of that. So there was a man 10 years ago, I know this man, who was convicted of incest, okay, with his sister. Not what it sounds. He met his sister when he was in his 40s, blah, 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 something occurred, committed incest. I say to you, this man here is a sex offender. True. There's a criminal conviction for sex offence. But it's not the truth. That doesn't give you the context, the pretext, the foretext that you need to understand that situation. Your mind would go straight away to being a paedophile. Okay? But if I say he's a sex offender, that's true. But it's not the truth. It's not the truth that means that you can get a proper view of that man's situation, his circumstance, how he arrived at that fucking point in the first place, and how that occurred. Okay? It's a man cheats on his wife. In fact, you've heard of Bill Burr, the comedian?
I've heard of him.
He does a great piece about this, and he's talking about domestic violence. It's obviously a very serious topic. He's a comedian, so he broke it down funny. But what he was basically saying is that domestic violence is obviously wrong, clearly, but there should be some sort of dissection as to why these things occur. And if a man, look, say that I cheat on my wife, okay, and someone comes to you and says, Neil Smedley's a scumbag, he's cheating on his wife. There you go. Well, yeah, that's a scumbag thing to do. He's a scumbag. But you don't know anything that occurred before that point, what led to that point. But what you've been told is, figuratively, it's true. It's true. And you can go on and tell that to whoever you want because it's true, but it's not the truth. The truth is a much, much bigger picture. So when you share a picture of the Amazon and they say the Amazon's burning, this is awful, true. But it's not the truth. The truth is far, far deeper than that. And unless you make an attempt to search for the truth and not just what is true, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, then you will only ever be surface, what's the word? You'll only ever be a surface thinker. Because it's easy to see something and react to it. You cheated, you're a scumbag. The Amazon's on fire, that's appalling. And see what I mean? And what you're saying is true, but it's not the truth. That's not deep enough. That's not an opinion. You've seen something, you've reacted to it, but that's not a well thought out logical opinion that reaches a conclusion about a course of action. Yeah, it's just virtue signaling nonsense. So there are plenty of things that are true that do not represent the truth.
And and I think there's a lot of triggers for that. I mean, recently, I don't know if you guys have seen it, there was that Netflix special of Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones, that he's done. And there's been a lot of talk about that already, about some of the topics that I touched on. Some people feel that they should be taken down off Netflix. But again, it's free speech. It's just having an open conversation. You take it or you don't. But it feels like, well, the media has always been kind of polarizing people. If something says something wrong, you're getting outed in the press. Oh, he said this, he's been racist, or whatever it is. But like I said, there's a full story, and that's what I've realised with the podcast. When people have coming in, people might think, yeah, he's a bad person or he's done bad things in the past, but there's a bigger story to that. Who is that person? Huge. Who is around? what environment was he in to be doing that? How did he grow up? Do you know, if you don't see all of that, you can't create a full picture. And I think as now with social media, the kind of setup that we're in, we just want to judge shit and be done with it. Yeah, finished.
Quickly as well.
Completed it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. But we feel justified in our judgment because we've taken something that's true. What I just said is true. You did cheat, for instance. That's true. Okay, but that can't be the end of the conversation. You don't want to know how we got here, what occurred, what role people played, where the proportion of the blame lies, so that we can fix this going forward. So people don't want to do that. They want to look at what's true and then move it forward. And again, it comes down to, if you guys know David Rubin.
No.
Right, so Dave Rubin's an American talk show host. He worked on the Young Turks. Famous for he's a gay guy, he's a Jewish guy, a bit of an anomaly, incredibly liberal guy, right? Super, super liberal. He became more conservative, right? Because he had a guy on his talk show called Larry Elder. Larry Elder is a 60-year-old black conservative guy who believes that racism is not a major issue in America or the West. So Rubin's doing his best to talk against him. And Larry Elder just come up with fact after fact after fact after fact to prove that what Rubin thought and felt nice wasn't actually correct. And as a result of that, Rubin changed his entire political opinion because of it. But what Larry Elder did was simply present facts, and that facts contradicted the subjective truth that Rubin had that felt right. Well, racism must be a huge problem. It's on the news all the time. And he goes, no, these are the facts. These are the facts without agenda. Okay, now tell me what you think. But nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to look at facts without agenda. We've all got agendas, all of us. It's really difficult to get rid of those agendas. But oftentimes the facts don't back up your subjective truth, which is why you can't be attached to it.
Yeah. It's so true. Everyone just wants to judge that first headline, like just skip.
Because it's comfortable, right?
Easy.
You feel comfortable in it.
Opinion.
It's easy, and it's easy, and there's comfort in it because everybody else agrees with you. Everybody would agree with that point of view, so it's uncontroversial. And people don't want to be controversial. Like, I know a lot of things that I think and feel and say are controversial, but that's just because they happen to be controversial. It's not because I'm trying to be controversial, which is an important distinction. It's because I think, right, if everyone believes X, then it's probably not the right way. So let me figure this out. Let me see where the truth lies. And then, of course, the other side of the truth argument is how much of truth do you want to apply to yourself in your private moments about, so what's true about you rather than what's true about your culture. Now that's a difficult conversation. That's something nobody wants to have, ever. Because what's true about you is almost certainly overwhelmingly negative until you break it down and address it. That's something nobody else wants to do.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true, but it is. It's.
Well, we touched on it last week, and I don't know if I'm probably getting close now, but it's if you said to somebody, well, usually on last week about saying how much you love your kids, yeah, and then anybody would say, well, I adore my children, and then you say, okay, you love your kids, of course, I get it. Okay, you smoke 20 a day. Why do you do that? You're drinking too much. Why do you do that? You've got no real ambition. You've been in the same job 20 years. Why do you do that? But you're telling your kid that you should take the world on and live his dreams. And then, if you're honest with yourself, you look at these 3 or 4 things and you go, fuck yeah. I do love my child, and I do love my wife, whatever context it may be. But I have these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 behavioural traits that absolutely speak against me as a witness to say that I love my family as much as I do. And they're difficult and painful things to admit. And that's one thing that I've really tried to do for myself. Like, as a business owner, as a dad, as a husband, a boyfriend, to look at me and go, fuck, there are things about me that are true that I need to address that mean I cannot claim that I really, really want to progress, that I really, really love my children, that I'm doing everything I can possibly do. And they're difficult, and that's a side of truth that we all need to get familiar with. What's true about you? How big are your bollocks? How fine to you are you prepared to look? You want to claim you love somebody, you better be able to fucking prove it. Your life better be in order completely. And I get it's more nuanced than that. It's a journey. But that's a topic that really, really fascinates me. The things that you claim, how much of what you claim is reflected in how you live your life? How much of you is true? And the reality is, not much of you is. Not much of me is. More than when I was 20, I'm trying to get better every day. But unless you have the balls to admit that there's lots of lies in you, there's lots of deceit in you, there's a lot of you that's not good, there's a lot of you that's not true, you know. And if you can admit that, you can become someone formidable. But if you don't admit that, and most of us don't, because we have places to hide, we'll hide all day long, you know. Then you'll stay the same. You'll stay the same, and the truth about who you could have been will be forever hidden.
Yeah.
You know. So what's true about you? What truth suits you? What truth suits your culture? What truth suits your society? And the man, you know, we're all men. You're talking about an alpha male. That's the essence of an alpha male. That's what you do. How do you get those three truths to coincide perfectly? You do that, and you're living right. You're living right. Find a truth that serves you, serves your family, serves your community, and live out that truth regardless of the fucking consequences. You know, when I was going to church as a Mormon, there was a hymn. I can't remember what the hymn was called, but a line in the hymn was, "Do what is right and let the consequence follow," and it always stuck with me. Like, yeah, that's a perfect rule for life. Do what is right and let the consequence follow. If the consequence is social ostracization, do it. If the consequence is you lose friends, do it. If the consequence is you lose a relationship, do it. But don't sacrifice the truth that you know you have to meet some kind of, you know, crazy societal ideal that just puts you in line with everybody else.
Yeah.
Because that's death. That's death. That's a slow suicide. That's all you're doing, and you know it. You know it when your head hits that pillow. You know full well. You lose respect for yourself. You know, and as a man, once you start to lose respect for yourself, it's game over. Especially if you've got a wife and you've got children, it's game over because they see it too. They see it too. You know, you've got to get some bollocks.
Yeah, do you know that's the said it all, man.
Yeah, do you know what? Similar to what we're talking about with Luke Ambler, it's in a way, it sounds, I don't know, a bit religious me saying it this way, but everybody has to kind of put work in on themselves. And yeah, we don't talk about it, we don't do it, but we kind of know when these situations arises, what's wrong, what's right, and like you said, living those truths to the end.
Yeah.
Of what you think, and it's not fucking easy. A lot easier said than done. It's
brutal. Like it's the one thing I wish I could tell people and get them to really understand it is life is brutal. Like if you're doing it properly, it's brutal. To change yourself is brutal. Like it requires more of you than you can possibly imagine. We just have so many places to hide, you know, and that's why so many of the religious truths speak volumes to us now. You know, that's what the religious people have always told us. Life is suffering. Yeah, it is. That's what religion's always told us. Life is suffering. Get used to it. Yeah, but live your life in such a way that you find a place that is so meaningful, so full of truth and passion and commitment that it justifies the suffering. Because you ain't escaping the suffering. You've just got to find a way to justify it.
So with people with that, then how important is it for people to find a moral code for themselves? Some people will follow the Quran, some people will follow the Bible, but then there are a lot of people out there that don't believe in anything and they'll just kind of go in life, which again is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but finding that moral compass and living by their truths, like how does that kind of happen? And I don't know if you can get the point.
I know what you mean. I don't think it matters too much in terms of your religious standpoint. So I know atheists that are fucking good men. I know Mormons that are good men. I know Muslims that are good men. I know atheists that are scumbags, and Mormons that are scumbags, and Muslims that are scumbags. So your religious creed or code doesn't give you an automatic what's the word? Like a moral step up. It doesn't mean anything. So we abide by the social contract, and that social contract keeps us all going. And then you have to set up your own ideal. Okay, so what's the ideal? And that's what religion does, you know. So whether, especially the Abrahamic religions, I don't get too religious on you, but forget whether you believe in God or not. Okay, forget that completely. It's irrelevant. Okay, but so Christ was the ideal man, in one sense. Okay, he was a sinless person. He was the ideal man. So for a Christian man, that is the ideal. So you set up your life to live by your ideal. Okay, so what do I do? Well, I don't tell lies. That's what I don't do. And I won't cheat on my wife. That's what I won't do. And I will help the poor. And that's what I'll do. And I will live like the ideal that I want to achieve. And that's what you do. And you set up your life in that way. And you set your life up in that way regardless of your religious convictions. But you have to figure out what your ideal is in order to aim at it. And that's the one thing that most people don't do. And that's why you get people that will just exist from weekend to weekend, from paycheck to paycheck until they wake up when they're 50. And one of the main reasons that people do that is because once you set an ideal for yourself, by definition, you've given yourself a judge. You've given yourself something that says you've succeeded or you've failed. And that's what an ideal does. Well, I wanted to be the heavyweight champion of the world. You either got there or you didn't. I wanted to be a doctor. You either got there or you didn't. So once you set yourself up the ideal, it gives you a judge, and nobody wants to be judged. Nobody wants to know when they've hit a point where they've failed. So we don't give ourselves ideals. We just give ourselves ways to journey through life, usually where we're neither good nor bad. And that's what most people are. One of the most powerful lessons I learned is that you are not a good man by default. I am not a good man by default. Okay, to be a good man, to be a noble man, to be a truthful man requires you to work on those things every day. It requires you to top those things up every day. To be good is a verb, it's a doing word, it's an action. We are not good just because of an absence of bad in our lives. Are you a good man? Yeah, I'm a good man. Why are you a good man? I've got to work every day. I don't rape, I don't murder, I don't steal. Okay, see, that's just a list of stuff you don't do. What do you do that makes you a good man? And then you start going, okay, I see. Yeah, I don't do anything that actively makes me a good man. But you can't claim goodness by the absence of badness. You see, and it's a real deep principle for people to get. What do you do that makes you a good person? And part of the thing you do that makes you a good person is you set an ideal. You pick an ideal and you aim for it. You know, you pick up the heaviest load you can possibly bear and you walk with it. You pick up your cross and you walk with it. You know, and that's one of the things. That's one of the things that you can do, that anyone can do, regardless of religious conviction. Pick up the things that are in your life that are yours responsibly, whether it's a girlfriend or you have a child or you have a business or you have a grandmother you're taking care of. Start there. Start with the things in your life that you can be directly responsible for. Pick those things up and honour those duties as best you can. Yeah, and then naturally that path will open up to you.
Yeah, it's crazy when you map it out. It's like the whole good and bad thing. It's like, people are accepting that we have good moods and bad moods and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone would describe like, Joe Blogs here, he's a good guy. Like, he's now in that statement, he's like infinitely a good person, a nice person. Whereas it's not really like that. Like, you cut people up in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a rush. You do shitty things like change lanes or whatever, like jump a queue or park on double yellows, run into a shop and run out, and you don't get a ticket. You do little bad things. It doesn't make you a bad person.
No,
but it's like it's like a flux of being good and bad, good and bad. Every day people do that all the time, but they don't. They just generalize it with he's a prick, he's nice.
Yeah,
she's nice. No, she's wanker.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. Like I've never actually heard anyone say that before.
Which is why you have to build up on your character. Like, I knew a kid that worked for me, for years, and he's a lovely kid, nice kid. Everybody liked him, but he was so nice that he was almost unbearable, if that makes sense, because there was no edge to him. There was nothing else but this niceness, and then you started to question: are you nice because you're nice, or are you nice because it's default for you? There's nothing else there, you know. And there was there's a line by Carl Jung. Let me get this right. I might not get it exactly right, but something along the lines of a good man isn't a no. Oh, I'll get this right. Yes, right. A weak man can't be a good man. Okay, a good man is a monster that has those things under voluntary control. So what he's saying there is the fact that you are just nice and good and placid, that's weakness. You're those things because you don't have anything else to do, to give. Yeah? He said that a really good man is a man that's a monster but has those things voluntarily under his control. And you see that archetypally play out in superhero movies. Who was the Incredible Hulk? He was a guy that couldn't control his temper until he met the right woman, and he controlled his temper, and he used his temper and his violence against the bad guy and the enemy. Didn't get rid of his aggression or his violence. He just found a way to harness the monster and use it for good. Batman was adulterous. He was a playboy. He was a capitalist. Yeah, found a way to harness those things and use them for good. Spend his money on the crime. You see this play out all of the time. In Harry Potter. Harry Potter was touched by malevolence. He had that. What's the name of the bad guy in Harry Potter? Voldemort. He had the experience with Voldemort, so he was aware of the malevolence. He was touched by malevolence. What the scar was on his head. That was the reason that Harry Potter was able to fight back with that malevolence. So you have to be capable of monstrous things, but then find a way to bring those monstrous things under your control and to use them for good. And they're the men in our society that really, and women, that really get shit done. That really get shit done. It's like, I could do that. I could be evil. I could be nasty and monstrous, but I'm not. And the reason I'm not is because it doesn't serve me well, it doesn't serve my family well, my community, my society. So I don't do it. They're the men that are incredible men. They're the men that are really positive for society. The other guys, it's just, there's Dave from the pub is a nice guy. He's a nice guy, but he's fucking useless. He's a nice guy, you know. You want to be a nice guy? Not if that's the payoff. I don't want to be a nice guy. If all I can be is a nice guy, I don't want to be a nice guy. You know, I can be a scumbag. I've been a scumbag. I've done awful things. I've done hideous things. You know, I spent my 20s doing bad things, trying to figure things out. And now I get to a place, you know, in my late 30s where I've gone, I get it now. I get it. I'm not going to try and eradicate those parts of my being, of my personality. What I'm going to do is try to incorporate them into the good in me and find a way to use these things for good. And you see that play all the time. You look at some of the greatest men in history. Deeply, deeply, deeply flawed men. Deeply flawed men. But found a way to bring all that back under their control and use it for good. So, you know, don't be a nice guy to finish last. Don't just be a nice guy.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's got to do with truth. I don't know how we got onto that, but it's
an
irrelevant point anyway.
That's how it goes, man. That's how it goes. I think, do you know what? 4 parts.
Second part, truth.
Second part, truth wrapped up. And we'll see you then on the next one.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Cool.